Hey, Unicorn Nation, welcome to another episode of the Unicorn Perspective. Today I sat down with a good friend of mine, Joshua Bretag, who is a Aussie. So he just sounds smarter when he speaks, right? I found that people from Australia and the UK, just the accent makes him sound way smarter, way more interesting. So I need to have more Australian guests on the show. So you should stick to this episode and listen to it just because he's Australian. But that's just one reason, right? It's a very small reason. Josh is a really, really smart marketer, right? He is somebody that understands the principles and fundamentals of marketing, but also understands the data and the science behind it, and is able to combine those two elements of kind of creativity and creative thinking with like really factual data based thinking, right? And so usually when you find marketers, they're either one or the other, right? You usually find marketers that are very creative. They're very good at writing, and they're very good at like the visual component of it, the storytelling component of it. Then you find marketers that are just very very number focused people who are all about the numbers, all about the data, and the data drives everything they do, right? But every now and then you find great marketers who are able to blend those two things. And Josh, one of those individuals, and it's no surprise then that his company Cubatica has been able to grow incredibly fast. And they're actually thriving during the current crisis we're going through. They're actually acquiring customers and scaling customers. They're just doing amazing things on the pay traffic side of things, doing very very large volume. And I knew I had to sit down with them, knew I had to chat with them. And so in today's conversation, we talk about everything you can think of when it comes to media buying. But we also talk about what it's like to start an agency, what it's like to grow an agency. We talk about the future, right? We dived kind of towards the end of the conversation to the future of media buying, the future of agencies, right? How will AI, machine learning, future tech and trends, how will that impact our current industries that we all operate in, right? So just a great conversation. I love sitting down with people that are very similar to me, right? That have the kind of same thought processes, the same skill sets, the same knowledge base, and we just hit it off. We had a great conversation. Stick around; you're going to enjoy it. All right, Mr. Josh. So let's dive right in because you've already killed 16 minutes of my day. I'm just messing with you. It's amazing how many problems, and this, I'm just yanking Josh's chain right now, but like they're the technical issues that occur with Skype is just amazing for one of such a massive tech company, to still have so many issues. Just blows my mind. So we each kind of spent 15 minutes trying to make a video feed work, and luckily we got it to work. Otherwise it's going to be a frozen picture of you for 60 minutes, and I'm sure that would have been enjoyable, just me talking to like a static image. But I want to dive. I'm going to dive right in with a hard question. Not so much a not so much a hard question in that like the answer's difficult, some crazy like formula, but I ask a lot of really good media buyers this, and agency owners, and all the things that you are like. What do you think it is right now about most marketers, like why they're not doing well? Like why is there such a lack of quality? And we've talked about this multiple times about just, we've really struggled to find talent, and we've searched everywhere, and we've put dozens of media buyers through the ringer, and we've given them kind of layups, and we've struggled. I know so many agencies, so many other people that I know that are high level media buyers or agency owners that struggled to find talent. And I love just asking other smart people who run agencies, like, what is the one, two, three things that you think you're seeing right now that's like, why are only a few people actually really good at doing this at a high level?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to, for me, I've noticed three traits. One is the willingness to test and to be wrong, and to be happy to be wrong and something to go wrong. The other one is the veracity to learn, so just wanting to learn without being asked to, and just absorbing tons of information from lots of different sources, and then being able to distill that down to like, okay, that relates to this, that relates to that. Oh, I can actually, this thing sounds good from something like from a completely different sector, but I can actually pivot that and make it work for this if I apply it this sort of way. And the other one is just the fundamentals. A lot of people I find with media buying get caught up in the courses on the tactics and what you can do for Facebook and stuff, and what you can do on like Instagram, and what you can do on Google, network. And they forget the whole thing about you need to actually convince a person to buy first and understand why they're going to buy before you even worry about the tactics and the platforms.
So
So
how do
that's the
you,
three
yeah.
things I look at.
And that was great because I was going to ask you just one thing. You came prepped for three, as if you read my mind that I was going to ask you for 3 points there. I should have asked you for 4 points and see if you had something that you pull out. So like those elements, obviously the learning component, everyone can kind of do that, right? It's you can go out and you can read and you can consume information. Obviously, the way people process information is different. The way they store and analyze information is different. But there's a lot of pieces of what you said which are hard to pick up from learning, right? And there's almost this kind of gut instinct that at least that I feel that I have, and I know people that I look up to and learn from have, where
Mm.
they can understand like what's going to motivate somebody, like what's going to trigger them to stop, to click, to engage, to buy. How does that skill get developed? Like how did you develop that? How do you help your media buyers develop that kind of instinct?
I think it comes down to noticing the person's traits to start off with for me. So like I found I just had a love for data and a love for figuring out why people like clicking. I had a love for figuring out, well, why does the person actually do that? I had a very inquisitive mind in that sort of sense. So I always find like even hiring non-media buyers and training them up, if I know they've got a kind of inquisitive mind, they keep asking why, like a 3-year-old kid that drives you nuts. That generally leads to a really good media buyer for us that we find. And I found that was what really helped me out in my media buying career. When I did it was just like just keep asking why and going deeper and just being very, very inquisitive about and being excited about that and enjoying that information. So it's like you can learn for the sake of learning, but if you're not enjoying it, you're not really going to absorb it. So I always look for someone that's trying to really push the envelope in that sort of sense. Like they're learning, but they're also going like, well, they're taking parts from this, they're taking parts from that, and they're trying to put it together and trying to figure it out. And that's where that testing methodology comes in, like testing framework. It's like, I think this might work and I want to put some money against it and kind of find out. And that's how you build your gut feel eventually. Because you kind of find out what works, what doesn't work. You go, okay, this sort of targeting works for that. This sort of messaging works for that sort of audience. These sorts of things work here and there. And that's what I really find when it comes to what separated me when it came to like being really good at running Facebook accounts and just media buying overall compared to when I was working with other media buyers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree 100%. I think what's challenging is creating an environment and a framework where that you're able to give somebody kind of enough of a leash to do that and to fail and to try things, but not too much that they
Yeah.
can go off the deep end, right? So I'm curious when you kind of bring on somebody, you're trying to train up a media buyer, build out that team, like where's that balance of, hey, I want to help them and support them and empower them and also keep them on track, but I also don't want to like I'll just tell one part here. Like what I find interesting is you obviously want to have frameworks in place, right? So if you're running an agency, you need to have frameworks and systems in place. You need to have structure in place. But on the other side of it, what I also find interesting is I'll meet other media buyers, other marketers, other agency owners who do things completely different than I do it and are just as successful or even more successful. And so part of me is like, well, I want to give them my systems and my foundation, my structure, but especially if you're bringing on like a senior media buyer, somebody very talented, you also don't want to force them into a silo if the way that they do certain things, the way they're going to learn to do certain things actually could improve our overall results. So I'm curious, like, how are you balancing that with your agency?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I think we've only really found a good balance in maybe the last 6 months, to be honest. So we've just been tweaking it and playing with it and moving it. And like I've been running it for 9 years now, so like
Yeah.
it wasn't easy to get there, and it never is. And it is very much a question for your own agency and what suits your style of personality and stuff, and how much risk you're willing to take, and what your risk propensity profile is. But for us, it's more so like I like to think of it like a race course and like horses with blinders. You kind of give the guy to start off with. I'm happy, like I trust you and stuff, but I want you to run stuff this way to kind of start off with. Just understand our framework, why we do the things the way we do. And then once like you get some wins on the board and once that starts working, cool, you can start testing some of your external stuff. And generally what I mean by blinders on a horse is I'll go, cool, you can spend up to 2 grand testing your strategies and stuff alongside this to show me that it's going to work. I'm happy to invest, that much money to kind of see if something's going to work or not. If it's going to take more than that, then generally I won't invest it to start off with. But as they get more wins on the board, they can take bigger risks and they can get bigger amounts to play with. But also, too, you don't want to kind of confine a person into that strategy because they might have some really cool stuff that you just don't know about. And also, too, you got to expect Facebook changes and changes on other platforms where you just got to pivot all of a sudden straight away because that stuff's just not allowed. A good example of that was before and after shots. All of a sudden, fantastic for everyone in the fitness industry, and they just completely cut it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's a tough place to be especially when you're like us, where you kind of start as a media buyer and then you eventually become a business owner and you're running multiple companies. At some point, uh, and I was talking to Ezra about this the other day, like you need to kind of remove yourself from being the expert. Like, myself and Ezra and these people, like we're not in Ezra's, years ahead of me, but like in the minutia of like running Facebook ads every hour. Like he's found really, really smart young people who are like doing it every day and they're building their expertise. And so it's a balancing act where you want to do it because you've kind of perfected it and you think the way you do it is the best way to do it. But at the same time, in order for the business to grow, you need to remove yourself and trust other people and empower other people. Otherwise, you're going to be
Yeah.
stuck in this trap. And I was stuck in it for years, where I would always want to do it myself because you would give somebody else control, let them run an account. You'd watch them spend $1,000 or $1,500, and you'd see it going really badly. And instead of having the patience or the structure to teach, empower, educate, you just jump in because it's easier to just do it yourself than to do those things, right? And
Yeah.
that's been a really, really tough lesson to learn. It's taken a very long time to get to that point where you learn, okay, I would rather have
Yeah.
somebody that's doing it 60%, 70%, 75% as good, but they're doing it full time and allowing me to not have to do it, and I can focus on other things. And that's a trap I see a lot of people
Yeah.
fall into, right?
Yeah, and it's a tough one because that's the worst thing you could do to someone new is jumping in and just rambling everything they've done. So you basically just told them you're shit, you can't do the
Yeah.
job, and they're going to start freaking out about that and like, okay, I'm sorry, trying to fix it up, and then they're not going to be confident in their own decisions and things, and it just ends up in a perpetuating spiral that just goes downhill for both of you, really.
Yeah, it's cool. There's a few people we know in the industry that have built very very large teams, and the framework they use is very interesting. Where it's more of a pod framework, where they have really clear hierarchy, but it's collaborative, right? So you have kind of your intern, your junior media buyer, senior media buyer. You have your kind of team lead. You have all these players involved on multiple projects, and it becomes more collaborative instead of just like top down, where it's just people kind of, hey, this is the way I do it, this is the way you're going to do it, and that person then pushes it down below them, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think that model is really interesting. We're starting to actually implement that more into like our businesses, because that's really the way we've tried. We've tried it every other way, and the collaborative model has been the most successful in ways we've tried it. We haven't done it as perfectly as the ways we're kind of implementing now, thanks to some help that we've had. Um, but it's a very challenging part of building a business, especially on the agency side, is like it's really easy to kind of run a 1, 2 man, 2 woman shop agency where you have, 10 clients or so and each paying a few $1,000s a month. It's really, what we found is it's really hard to get to like 10, 15 people. And then it's really hard to then take the next step and get to like 10 plus million, right? So like getting from 0 to 1 million has its own challenges, and getting to 1 million to 10 million has its own challenges. And a lot of people get stuck below that 1 million range where it's like 1, 2 people, and it's because they can't hire, they can't train, they can't empower, and so they're just kind of going on this Ferris wheel where they're just, hey, I've scaled this thing up, now I need to go over here and do this, and this thing just falls to pieces, and they got to go back here and pick it up and build it back up, and then this thing falls to pieces, and you're just building one thing at a time, and you're not building an asset. And that's really tough to actually build something. I know you guys have done a really good job of investing, and I'd love to kind of talk about that, of your plan. And we've talked a good deal about this, of how you're building Cubotica for the future and thinking beyond just, hey, we're trying to just build, a kind of small little agency. It's like, no, we kind of see where the industry's going, and we're willing to sacrifice maybe short-term profits for long-term upside, instead of being stuck in that, hey, we can make a lot of money but it's a few people and we just, maximize profits. It's no, let's actually invest in people, let's invest in buying companies, let's invest in actually investing in companies and technology, and set ourselves up 3, 5 years out. So I'd love to hear kind of, you don't have to share the details obviously of your game plan, but like your kind of mindset and how you're approaching growing the business right now.
Yeah, sure. Before I jump in, I just jump back on the point before. So, like, something we took from the coding world was the where they do buddy
Hmm.
programming, and we just applied that to media buying, and that was just huge. Just to having like a buddy, someone a mentor in the team, or even external. Like, we would happily hire a really senior external media buyer and just pay them mentoring just for them, just so they can mentor one of our juniors and help them out and ask questions. We found that's always fantastic. So we'll have three or four media buyers that are experts outside of Cubatica that will help out, that we could just lean on and go, hey, what about this? What do you think about that? Just to get, because like, we're not always going to have the answers.
Yeah.
So I'd rather have a brains trust that we can rely on. And I think the other thing about when you pivot from 0 to 1 million is pretty easy. From 1 million plus to 10, it's more like you don't become an expert media buyer, you become an expert leader. And that's what you need to, that's what the pivot you have to make is you have to understand that you're managing people, not accounts and clients. So like you can't really be on the client facing side because every new client you get on is more extra work for you. And you just can't keep adding to that workload as you get to like, 10 million. It just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not scalable at all.
No, you find that out pretty quick when you try.
Yeah. And so talking about kind of a scale and going beyond that, the $10 million range, how is your like your kind of approach to building the agency? Like, how do you think it's different? Because I know it is different. So I'd love to hear just like
Mm.
why you're approaching it the way you're approaching it and how you're using kind of what's happening right now as an opportunity to set the business up for success, beyond just a few months.
Yeah, so on that, it's like I was lucky to have a really good accountant and a couple of good friends that kind of just give me a heads up there's going to be a recession sometime soon. There's going to be some sort of market correction. So we started saving up capital for that, just to, so we can acquire assets at a much cheaper rate than what they would normally be during bull market. Yeah, a bull market. I was going to say bear for a second. So yeah, during a bull market, and then also same for like there's going to be a lot of talent and stuff out there right now, especially because a lot of companies just haven't prepared for this. They haven't got the cash flow there to survive it. So then it's basically crashing for them. So they've had to lay off all this really, really good talent that's now going to become available, and they're not going to have jobs. So you can quite easily pick up that really good talent for like I'd still pay them. You should still pay them what they're worth, but you can also get them for like they're more open to try like project work and this sort of stuff. So you can get them on in piecemeal to start off with, and then get them onto full time if you can afford it. For us, it's been more so on like the vision and the strategy side. Is I've kind of brought it back to the thought process of generally smart people or really good entrepreneurs want to build their own business to a certain extent. They always have like if they want to go off in that kind of angle, they always want to be pretty much paid better than like any wage could really pay them. So like you can get your wage of 200, 300k, 400k kind of thing, but they want to have some sort of skin in the game, some sort of investment, some sort of shares, not so much, but just like getting the cash back from the thing you're extracting. They see that the value they put in is the value they get back out at the
Yep.
same time. So I see that as like a very important equation to kind of think about it from a talent side of where I'm not the talent that everyone's relying on to make this happen. It's more so like how can I add extra talent, but then also have multiple players that I have a smaller share or a half share of, that we can build out. So it's just like okay, then you can pitch that vision. You can quite easily get really smart people on board because they see where they can go in 3, 4, 5 years time, and that they can use our ecosystem to help build their own business. But then we own a part of that business as well, and it sits underneath our what we're going to call at the moment Imagine Inc. brand. So Cubatica is like one small agency of that small, larger brand, and we're going across like education, SaaS, multiple different because we're like all interested in like human performance. So like you'll see a brand come up with that spin-off in maybe the next year or two. So we're just investing very, very heavily in getting on the right people, showing them as this like trajectory that we're looking to go towards. The fact that they can once they get bored of something in like Cubatica for a sense, that's okay. We've got a brand here that you can go move over to that would love you to come and take over. And it also provides a lot of career progression for a lot of different people, and it quite naturally at the moment we're doing it based on like a natural basis of like where we think that person would be really good, really well suited. Because I find the confines of running an agency model, like eventually it's going to disappear. Like I don't think agency is going to be anywhere like it is now in 5 or 6 years' time. That's why we're starting now to invest in machine learning and AI for our media buying side. I think it's more so going to come towards strategy and design, and the day-to-day clicking of stuff and knowing how to manipulate platforms is pretty much going to disappear to a certain extent.
That's an interesting concept. So you think the And when you say like the traditional agency model, are you talking more about the the agencies that most people watching this probably think of, which is kind of more direct response digital marketing? Or are you talking about kind of Madison Avenue agencies that are these full service, very large public companies that do, you know, print, billboard? Because I have opinions on it too, but I'm curious like which specifically you're talking about.
Both, to be honest. I
But
think both are going to pivot quite well. I think you'll still see the smaller ones, like the sub 5 mil agencies, still be around and things because those smaller provider mum and pop shops won't be able to afford a machine learning and huge media buying platform that are available now. So like minimum 100K spend per month to make them work. So it's just like that's just not viable for a small pizza shop around the corner, which you can have like 50 or 60 clients of. But also too, I see the reason why it hasn't come into the marketplace as quick as it could have, and that's because more so like your Madison Avenue kind of agency, it's like they make their money from charging for times and billings and stuff like that. That's where they make their massive margin. So they're not going to introduce a machine learning or an AI kind of platform because it's going to cut their margins up, and they're going to be able to get negotiate down procurement rounds and all this sort of stuff, and it just doesn't suit their model at all, and they can't pivot on a dime to make that happen and work. So that's why we're looking at it. We can be that nice little middle agency. It's like, cool, we can just go up against one of your Madison Avenues and, give us 3 months and we'll make it work. Watch it.
yeah, I think what'll be interesting to see is the I think there's still going to be major components of what agencies offer that'll still be needed and relevant for at least the next decade or so, specifically around like the creative side of things. So like
Oh, yeah,
What the Harmon
100%.
brothers do, right? I mean, it's because we're running ads now for a skincare line that hired them and made like crazy awesome videos for them called No BS, and and like those video assets are so incredible and set. They give you such a unique competitive advantage because it's just like a wow factor and it's great for ads, it's great for branding. So I think there's definitely it's going to be really hard for any type of software that's based on AI or just kind of more basic machine learning to be able to create that type of output in the near future. I mean,
Oh, yeah, 100%.
eventually it will.
Uh,
So yeah.
I don't know actually, because I think it comes back again, like it comes to my argument of fundamentals. If you know the fundamentals, and that's the same about Harman Brothers, if you know the fundamentals of what they're buying and what the pain points were and stuff, which is like huge in their research process, then it comes back to that. Like if you know the fundamentals of that sort of stuff, I don't know if AI and machine learning will ever take over the creative and stuff side. I don't know if it'll understand humans well enough to be able to do that.
Oh, it's so I guess this is where I had a really deep conversation with my friend Scott Olford like a few episodes ago, and he's a super like future tech guy, and so we chatted for like an hour about this, and we went really deep, and it's hard to like what's interesting about this discussion, and this can be a rabbit hole tangent that we go down if we want to, is because this stuff really interests me, it fascinates me. Is there's stuff that's hard to even like think about or comprehend because we're not even aware it exists, right? So like the conversation we had was like the from a jobs perspective, right? So a lot of people are saying, hey, we should regulate AI, we should pause it because of the damage it's going to do to the economy because it's going to cause so much mass unemployment, which is true. There's going to be a retail jobs, there's going to be a lot of blue collar jobs that get wiped out, accounting, legal, all that stuff it's a lot of it's going to be wiped out. But they said the same thing, around the turn of the century when you're talking about things like the printing press, the automobile, and it did wipe out a lot of jobs, but there were things like we couldn't even fathom needing. We talk about the internet, right? The internet wiped out lots and lots of jobs, but now we have, a bulk of the economy comes from, New York and Silicon Valley. They don't produce anything, right? They write code. So it's like you have just tens of millions of jobs of people that do something that, 30, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, nobody would even thought of as a job. Like it wasn't even the radar. So I think what's interesting about the AI, like doing Harmon Brothers stuff, for example, totally crazy to think about right now.
Yeah.
And 110% not happening probably maybe in our lifetimes, depending on things progress. But you look at some of the tech that's being put out there. I think was it Samsung or was it Sony? They put out this test like for CES, and it was showing their ability to create lifelike, basically totally computer generated like digital avatars reading the news and stuff. They looked like real people, and they were able to like read the news and do things like that. And so that's where we're at today, obviously. And then we have like deep learning, we have these deep fakes, all this stuff. So like they're not accurate, they don't look real. But like 30, 40 years ago, you think about what was happening 30, 40 years prior to today. Like, is it possible that there's a software that is able to just like create any type of human being, replicate any actor, any actress, and have them speak and do things and input massive amounts of data in terms of like, this is what people want, this people are searching, what they're looking for, and be able to think creatively? Like, it's an interesting
Yeah.
question, and you don't know, right,
Um,
until you see it.
well, if you think about it from the opposite perspective of the cinematic universe, it exists to a certain extent already. It's just not it's not viable in terms of monetary to make it happen yet.
Yeah.
So it does exist to a certain extent. It's just like, how do you make it viable?
And it's the same way you make computers that, if you watch like Mad Men, the last season, they got a computer built in their office, and it was the size of pretty much like an entire apartment. And
Mm.
it probably cost, millions and millions of dollars in today's money. And so, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's not feasible today. And it might not be feasible 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, but at some point it's like, the human brain is essentially a computer. It's a really, really complex piece of machinery that is just a massive number of electrical signals being fired through different parts of your brain. And so if you can build an advanced enough computer that can act like a brain times, a billion, because it's got access to unlimited, processing power and server space, like, if a human can learn to think creatively and critically, and if we can have people like Mozart and Einstein, like, can a computer eventually do that? It's a crazy thing to think of,
yeah,
at some point. But yeah, like, it's not going to happen anytime in the future. I don't think the Harmon brothers got to worry, but like, short term, those are probably the most important jobs, the creative people, the critical thinking, because that's going to be the hardest for a lot of this, software to replace. A lot of the task stuff will easily be replaced in the next few years.
yeah. I think it's more the creative stuff is very much protected at the moment, and it's going to be more. It's going to pivot towards more strategy than the actual doing of the task.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're going to have to cut over. I think the big change you're going to see after what's happening right now is you have massive overhead for a lot of these companies. They need these massive,
Mm.
ridiculous pieces of real estate on the most expensive streets in the world. They need huge staffs. They need all these luxuries and stuff. And you realize, do we really need all that? If you're like, I kind of think about, if you were a fly in the wall of some of these executives, like CEOs and C-suite offices for companies like, Disney or Goldman Sachs, or just different companies that have large real estate footprints, they might be wondering, hey, our business is still running right now. Nobody's in an office anywhere, but our companies are still running. Work's still getting done. Like, do we really need to have all this space? Do we really need to have all this overhead? And especially the agencies, like, they're going to have to cut massive amounts of staff, because a lot of it will be replaced by software. Like, huge departments probably can be replaced by AI, and even just more basic software in the next few years. So they're definitely, yeah, you're 100% right. I think like there's going to be a massive shift across the board for the big Madison Avenue agencies, all the way down to the smaller kind of social media marketing agencies that are running right now.
Yeah, well, like, as you suppose, there's already tools like if this and that kind of tools already that exist, and they're like mass consumable, quite easily to use. But yeah, it'll take a little while, I think, for AI and machine learning to trickle down. So hence why we're trying to get ahead of it before it happens.
Yeah, and so you guys have made some investments. You're working on some cool stuff, which is awesome. Do you think that's like a smart move for, if there's other agency owners watching now, other business owners watching right now that run a service-based business, getting involved in software, looking for either companies to acquire, or companies that have proprietary software that they're looking to potentially sell or license?
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile looking at and investing if you've got the money to make it happen. But only like if you're like doing, you got clients that can spend at least 100K plus per month, kind of thing. Like, because most of the AI platforms, there's only like three or four of them out there at the moment they'll only work to like that budget and above. From what I've seen and from the research that we've done, but definitely do your research and stuff, because it's still not 100%, in set in stone. So we're taking a risk with it as well. But we've just seen like, 4 or 5 case studies where it's just been completely solid. We've done a couple of tests and it's worked absolutely amazingly. So like, cool, it's worthwhile. It's like an 80% risk for us in terms of like 20% risk in terms of like, it's not going to work out, 80% of the reward that it will. So it's like, cool, let's just go deep in this and just get going because the rewards seem to outweigh the cost for us. So you just got to do that analysis on your own, each agency basis to see if it's right for you as well.
Yeah, but even beyond, like, let's take AI and that off the table, and let's just think like more in a general sense, just software as a additional income stream or revenue center for a business. So if you're like an agency and you represent, gyms and restaurants, and you're just getting crushed now because nobody's running ads, like, is now a time to look into what software could these companies be using? What other tools are they still paying for or using right now that I can get involved in? And because there's got to be opportunities out there, right? Especially for these brick and mortar businesses that are pivoting or they're trying to adapt.
Mm.
And it's not happening in the real world. It's obviously all happening online right now.
Yeah, so definitely there is, like, you definitely have to look at the pivots. I would definitely be investing in software or SaaS of some sort because you want to build some sort of asset that you own. But you can eventually, if you want to sell at some stage, because an agency's multiples are only like 1.5 or 2 times generally across the marketplace. So like you don't really get a lot for an agency unless you've got some sort of SaaS or SaaS play. Really, it's going to get you a 5 to like an 8 times multiple. So like if you want to go to software, it makes complete sense when you want to sell it, makes your company more valuable. You can get bigger loans, all this sort of stuff. It opens up a whole bunch of opportunities later on. But there's also other ways that you can look at pivoting that. It's like you can maybe acquire a brand instead of a SaaS and build that up. So like when what's actually going well, go after those sort of clients at the moment. Like that's one of the strategies that we did was like, okay, well, half our client roster kind of has to, put it on hold and, settle off and just wait during this period of Corona. And then the other half are just booming through it. So we were lucky that we already had like that nice sort of split. And then we've just acquired not acquired, but had 4 or 5 new clients come on that are doing really well during the Corona period, but they just can't handle the amount of volume that's coming through. So it's just like, your fitness, your cosmetics, these sort of areas, immunity sort of stuff is doing really, really well for us.
Yep.
So those sort of things, like go look at those, even though on a CPA basis, I'd even look at those at the moment if people want to. That way it's like no risk to them to a certain extent, but you can definitely make it work. Like things are very cheap at the moment in terms of most of the media buying platforms for buying traffic. So it's like it's worthwhile taking the risk rather than like, sitting on your hands and just hoping that it will turn around and, it's all going to be nice and rosy. It's going to be completely changed by this whole period in 12 months' time. And we're also, for us, we've looked at the past trends and just looked at like past epidemics and the global financial crisis previously. And we're just seeing like it's going to be like, we think it's going to hit in 5 waves, 5 or 6 waves, where it's going to be cool. We're in one at the moment, we're all locked down, but then all of a sudden they start opening up the restrictions and people start getting out again. And then all of a sudden, all the cases start spiking up again. So they have to lock back down again. And it's going to, until a cure is kind of like, not a cure, but
Vaccine.
Vaccine's found. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. That's still going to take 4 or 5 months to get that out to the world and produced and all this sort of stuff. Like you see the issue they got with masks and stuff at the moment. You have the same problem with vaccines when it has to come out. So it's going to, I mean, come on, look at the toilet paper. It's ridiculous. We ran out of toilet paper in the world pretty much.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it'll be interesting. Yeah. People haven't spoke about the, everyone, it's great you brought that up because everyone does have this assumption that once the vaccine is discovered that it's like overnight we're all good, but there's a massive, think about the logistical challenge of getting 6+ billion people a vaccine. There's just massive just from a pure just distribution standpoint, and then there's a financial standpoint, who's paying for it all. Like there's a lot of how do you get people to get it without causing chaos and riots. Like there's a lot of implications that each country is going to think about, and then local municipalities are going to think about. But we'll see when we get to that bridge how we cross it. It'll be interesting once we get to that point.
Oh, it's the same as the bridge that we have to cross when how do the governments claw back all this cash that's given to us now? That's going to be the other part they're going to be aware of. That's going to come after Corona. At some point they're going to have to recover that. How they're going to recover it, we don't know yet. So it's just like, how's that going to affect businesses as well? So that's why I'm like, after the first time I had a really big hit up with the agency, I was always build up multiple pillars that I can rely on. So if one pillar knocks over, the business is still fine. 2 pillars knock over, it's still fine. If 3 knocks over, then I'm starting to have a bit of a problem. But at the moment, only 1's knocked over. I've still got 4 other ones, which is quite fine. And, the business runs quite well based upon that. So I'm always at a thing like people like say, niche down and stuff. But like I agree with that when you start, but once you get big enough and things start working, broaden your horizons. Because if you niched right now, you're paying the price for it right now. If you're in like a restaurant or a delivery kind of service niche, like I would expect that like 80% of your client roster would just like, yeah, I can't spend now because I can't even be open.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, what happened, and it's really bad timing for a lot of people. The last like 2 to 3 years, a big movement online has been people teaching other people how to start agencies for local businesses. That's been probably the largest info product trend. I'm probably going to hear Hokey and Buster barking. I think we get deliveries every day now from Amazon. There's like something comes to our door like 3 times a day, and so the dogs go crazy. Um, but as if like our little 5 pound Yorkies can actually do anything to feed anybody.
That's all right. I put my daughter over there with the iPad, so she's been nice and quiet, just chilling away with the headphones.
Oh man, she's a cutie. I saw her last time we chatted. So um, so where we're at, yeah. So the local businesses, this trend where you had a lot of people teaching people how to start social media marketing agencies. Run either Facebook ads or run social media, and you get you get 8 gyms or you get 6 gyms to each pay you $2,000 a month, and all of a sudden you have a $16,000 to $20,000 a month business. And that sounds great, and it did for a lot of people that didn't have that were either 9 to 5ers or didn't have any income potential, like make a good living. The problem though is that nobody really explained to them the things that you just talked about, which is there's always an inherent risk when you get too laser focused with your audience, with your demographic, right? So if your whole customer base is in the same exact industry, in the same sector within that industry, all it takes is one, not even major black swan event, but like even a smaller industry level event. Like if there was something that came out, let's say you're running ads for restaurants, right? And there was something
Yeah.
about like swine flu, or that the lettuce thing that happened a few months ago, the iceberg lettuce contamination. Like that might not have a big impact in any other industry, but that could devastate your restaurant business. Nobody goes out to eat, right? And so there's much smaller events that could just tip over the dominoes for you.
Mm.
But people, it's an amazing thing about human beings. It's a good thing and a bad thing. We have this unique ability to be incredibly optimistic and positive, even in some of the worst scenarios. And it can hurt us though. I think a lot of people, when things are going well, they get overly confident and optimistic that, holy crap, I was doing nothing. I was making 30,000 a year. I bought this course. I started an agency where I work with 10 chiropractor offices. They each pay me $2,000 a month. I make $20,000 a month now, and it's just me and a few VAs. Like I did something right. I'm really smart. Like I cracked the code. And instead of saying, well, know what, maybe I should, get into software for chiropractor offices, or maybe I should diversify into other industries, or maybe I should look at investing some cash into real estate, or just getting in totally different industries. They just double, triple, quadruple down, and eventually something happens because they're not even building. The last thing I'll say here, and I'd love to get your just feedback on just this whole thing, like what you said before about the multiple agencies. There's assumption that you're gonna just have this cash cow forever. And you need to look at what type of businesses you're
Yeah.
building.
Nah.
There are cash flow lifestyle businesses, and then there are businesses that are built to sell or drive large liquidation events, where you make considerable amounts of wealth. That's how you really build wealth. A lot of people look at this and saying, well, I'm building this thing, it's making a lot of money, and eventually maybe somebody will buy it. But it's like, no, if nobody's going to buy an agency of 1 or 2 people that brings in 20K 30K a month from 8 or 10 clients in the same industry that are all small businesses, each doing under $1 million, like nobody's buying that. You couldn't give it away, right? And so one day when you decide I don't want to do this anymore, what do? You're trapped to your business now, because either you just go and start from scratch, or you got to try how to get some cash for it, but you're not going to get cash for it. So you need to be thinking about how can you build businesses that give me cash so I can have my lifestyle, so I can invest in things, but also businesses that I'm looking to just build and not take any cash out of. These are businesses I'm putting cash into and time into, because the goal is to build an asset, whether it's an e-commerce store, whether it's a SaaS company, whether it's a real estate investment company, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
that 10 years, 20 years down the road, 5 years down the road, I can sell for 5, 8, 10, 20x multiple and then build real wealth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of the thing that has frustrated me about a lot of the courses is the fact of they give the tactics but not the fundamentals,
Yes.
which is like actually how to run a business, how to think objectively and have mental models about, asking the questions that actually matter.
Yep.
And like, I think one of the best ones is when times are good is when you're actually doing bad, because you're relaxed, you're comfortable, you're not being as objective about stuff. You're very overly optimistic about, okay, cool, I can go and drill these sorts of things. But it's like, if I was that, let's say I hadn't had that lesson, 3 years ago, and I now came into COVID, I would be in a much different situation right now. Instead of having, 5 times our revenue just sitting there. So like we can survive for 15 months without any revenue from anyone, and it's fine. Like there's no big issue there. But there's a lot of agencies that have come through that because they've come through those courses, and they haven't taught the fundamentals that run the whole business underneath that. It's just like, oh, here's how you can make an agency, and off you go. There's no thing about like how to treat with clients, how to reinvest that cash. Have you looked at doing stock markets? Like if you invested in the VIX before it crashed, when the market crashed, you would have made like 25 times your money. So it's like, you don't have to make the money from your business. You can just you can make it in other places if you know where to look and who to listen to is the other big one, is to be careful about as well. So that's just something, a word of warning I'd say. Just be very careful and make sure you check anyone that you kind of actually listen information from, ask them where the data's coming from.
Yep. Yeah, it's a problem because it's something that's almost like human nature for pretty much everybody. And I went through it where you work for so long, especially like for me, and people kind of know my story, but like, and I never actually even asked you this, but I'm going to ask you in a bit about your story. Cause I saw a video, I just looking at some things you've done in the past, and I saw a video from like 9 years ago about you going from a chef to this. So I never asked you about being a chef. So I'm going to ask about it in a second, but for me, it's like,
I can never get away from that story. God damn it.
It's the first thing that pops up. You got to get it off YouTube. So like I've been an entrepreneur since college, right? So I never, for the last 12 years now, I've never gotten a paycheck from somebody. Like I just haven't. Every dollar I've made. And so when you struggle for years, because that's the way you do it, you raise a ton of money, your company went out of business, right? Put all my money and lost my money. And then you get to a point where you start making, 6 figures plus, and all of a sudden you're like, this is great. And you focus on your lifestyle changes first, and you don't do the things you should do, right? Because it's now I'm finally hit it. I'm making lots of money, and it happens to everybody, right? And unfortunately, it's not enough people talk about like what you should be doing once your business gets to that point, right? It's everyone kind of thinks it's a gravy train. It's going to happen forever. And so you went from like, hey, I was barely surviving making, $5,000 a month to now making 20, 30, 50,000 a month. And instead of just saying, well, now I can put away, if I was living off 5K a month, now I'm having an extra 45K. Like I can be putting 20K into this, 10K into this. A lot of people say, well, now I got to move my lifestyle up. So my overhead's now 30,000 a month, 40,000 a month. And it's, for me, it's like, that's the one thing I could go back in time. And, obviously I was very lucky because I learned and I was able to keep growing and figured it out. If I go back in time, it would be when I started making money. From right then, I would have started putting a lot more of it away and investing into a lot more things, into different parts of our business, both some, like not just my personal money, but also company money, instead of just distributing all the profits. It would have been, hey, let's buy this e-commerce store. Hey, let's invest in this SaaS company. There's so many things you could do. And if we had done those a few years ago, like, obviously the business done very well and we're very, very lucky, but it could be way further along. Right. And so that's like the one thing I think everyone needs to hear is, if you're at that point where you're just kind of at that incline where you're going from flat to this, like, take it slow and think about investing a lot more of that when times are good, because when times are bad and you have nothing to save, then there's nothing you can do, right? Like once you need the money, there's nothing you can do to get more money. And a lot of people, that's when they
Yeah,
realize it. Oh crap, I should have been saving money. Oh crap, I should have been investing, because now nobody will give me money. And so now I'm really screwed, when you
yeah,
could have been putting away 5, 10, 20K a month and been totally fine for a year without any business.
yeah. I think a really good thing that too, which you bring up to me on that one was, I agree. Like with my, I put away 40% of my income, my personal income is investing straight away. Just to like, it comes out of the bank account as soon as it goes in, so I can't see it, and I find that
Yep.
works really, really well. It's just go. Can't touch it. But it's also too. I think a lot of people also don't value their own health and stuff as well. Which there's definitely a correlation between your health and your business. If you're not feeling healthy, you're not feeling well, you're going to
Yep.
see a downturn in your business, and you're also going to try and self sabotage yourself. And you got to kind of find out what's happening. And I think a really good way of preventing that is finding someone who is already at the stage where you want to be and getting them as a mentor. And a good way to find out if they're a good mentor or not is offer to pay them money, but then they won't take it
Yep.
because they don't, because the amount of money you can pay them is not worth it. They don't care. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, and then you can still pay them, obviously. But like, if the proportion of the amount of money you're paying them to the advice you're getting is like disproportionate, like their advice is so much better than the money you're paying them, that's a good mentor.
That's very
When you
true.
have,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
a really good point about the mentorship. And like a lot of people don't, people always ask us about when we started working with like Kevin. So when we started our agency with Kevin Harrington, people are like, well, how did you get him to agree to start working with you or partner with you? You were nobodies. It's amazing. A lot of these guys and women who are already, they've already done it. They've already made a ton of money, been very successful. They're no longer
yeah,
driven by making more money. Obviously they still want to make more money, right? But what really drives them is, how can I give back what I've learned to a generation, 2 generations below, and see, a
mm,
dozen other people just have these incredible careers because of what I was able to do for them. And like for Kevin, I mean, we're eternally grateful, because he gave us an incredible foot up. He gave us a really, really amazing propellant into the industry and gave us a lot of opportunities. And I know, for, it's me just speaking for him, but like, I'm sure that that makes him proud and excited to be able to see that, like, no, hey, I had a pretty big role in these guys who are the up and comers now. And there's a lot of really, really great, brilliant, smart, successful people out there who are looking to mentor people and aren't looking for cash or not looking
yeah.
for things. They just want to genuinely help other people. So the only thing you can do is ask, right? The worst thing they say is no, like, I don't want to help you at all.
Yeah, exactly. And generally, that's not a good mentor anyway, because generally someone who wants to help, but also too, like, don't think at the fact that they don't want the money, but like for me, I mentor people and I do it because I get content out of it. It helps me
Yeah.
to generate content for myself. But there's other advantages they look at that makes it a payback for them. And it doesn't matter what amount of money you pay them, you can't pay them enough to a certain extent. Like they will make more money from doing something besides helping you. I think a really good point on mentoring is just make sure that you're an action taker. Don't just ask questions and that could be answered on Google. Don't ask questions that you can get answers to. Like ask questions that only they can really answer if you give them the specific scenario about what it will help with.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think it's kind of a cliche, because a lot of people said it and they say it for a very, very long time, but it is a true part of business that I've learned is, if you're in a room and you're the smartest person in the room and the most successful, you're in the wrong room. If you have a group of partners and you're the most successful partner, the most successful person, like, you are not going up, right? And again, it's so
Yeah.
cliched, but the reason it's cliche is because it's
Well,
true. It's like 100% true,
mm,
and that's been an X factor for me, and I know for Jeremy, and everything we've done is we've been able to develop relationships with people that we've looked up to, people that are so smart, so successful, and now I get to call people friends, and I get to hop on calls with people, and like the ability to hop on a call with, Ezra Firestone for an hour, the ability to,
yeah.
talk to Russell Brunson for 30 minutes yesterday, the ability to talk to Rich Sheffrin, or these just, Roland Frazier, Ryan Dice, Perry Belcher, the list goes on and on. Like, that's invaluable. Like, the amount of knowledge and value I get from 30 minutes of talking to those people, or a connection they make, is incredible. And that's been a huge X factor in our success over the last few years as agency owners and business owners.
Yeah. And it's worth way more than any course or book that you can
Yeah.
buy.
Yeah.
Like that's nothing compares to a good person that can give you a pointed answer to a question specifically for your industry. Like
Yeah.
there's just nothing there. And the other thing I'd say about that is also on most courses, just buy the books. It's pretty much it's just rehashed stuff that's in books. Like you see, I've got a whole bunch there, and there's like 3 shelves of books over there. There is a direct correlation. I've seen a couple of studies and stuff, but also too, if you research it, people who read more books, and study more stuff, and learn more things generally tend to be more successful
No, it's true.
because you're
And
living up other people's stories.
yeah. And you look at, people like Warren Buffett who are incredibly busy, probably the busiest people in the world, like they still make time every day to read, right? So if Warren Buffett and these people
But
can do it, you can do it.
yeah, Bill Gates, dude's a freaking reads it and just absorbs content like there's no tomorrow. It's insane just to see what he does. But it's like the same thing as I like Warren Buffett. One thing I liked about him was the fact that his whole calendar is literally open. He refuses
Yep.
to take meetings basically. And that was something really pivotal for me to learn about. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't actually need to be doing these meetings. I don't need to be like, I've said no to so many meetings. And it's made me more successful because I can actually focus on what's important rather than having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting.
Well, yeah, the problem with meetings, we've done a good job internally of getting rid of a lot and restructuring the way we do our entire week, and the way we've kind of consolidated a lot of partner meetings, a lot of meetings with different owners of our companies into singular events or like quarterly things. People, I feel, do meetings and phone calls a lot. They book their calendars because it makes them feel like they're being very productive and they're doing something. Hey, look at my
They're
calendar.
just being busy.
And I see people actually, it's crazy. I literally see people on Facebook now and Instagram bragging. They'll show like screenshots of their calendars. And I was like, why are you bragging about the fact that your every minute of your day is booked up with phone calls with people? Like, you're not building a business that way. You're just talking all day. Like, unless those people are like employees of yours who are after the phone calls going and they're executing and building your business for you, like all you're doing is just talking in
Yeah,
circles. You're not building any value. You're not building anything for your company. You're just wasting your time all day long, and you're not getting paid for it either. Like it makes no sense.
that's that's a great point. Yeah, as you get bigger, like million plus sort of size, you got to look at the one to multiple. So it's 1 to 2, not 1 to 1 anymore. So like I jump on some sales calls, but not all sales calls. Like if it's important, if it's a big enough client stuff, sure, I'll jump on and help with technical answers. But now my focus is on partnerships. So it's like, okay, I get one partnership, but that brings us like 20 or 30 clients potentially. So it's like, okay, I need to go find more of those, or I look at new deal structures that we can do, or things like that, or a new person that can open up a whole new, part of the business for us. That's the sort of stuff that I focus on now instead of like the 1 to 1 stuff. It's the one to many is what
Yeah.
you need to focus on as you get bigger.
Yep. It can't be 1 to 1, and it also can't be you trying to do everything. Right. That's the other key thing for us.
No,
It's like I have almost no involvement now in our political business in certain brands. I'm involved we have a weekly call, and during that call we get updated on what's the progress, what's going on, and we can share ideas if we want there. But the rest of the week, like we have a whole team running it, and I know they're doing a better job than I could do. I'm not going to get involved and try to tell them how to do things. Same thing with our different partnerships and stuff. If I need to hop on a call to help close a deal or seal a deal with a big partner, I'll do it. The day-to-day media buying. And so like we got in the trap for a long time of trying to do a dozen things at the same time, and it's impossible. It fails every single time. So you need to be okay with, hey, I'm okay letting these people run this thing and spearhead it, and I take a back seat and I get involved maybe once a week, once a month, to just check in, make sure
yeah,
there's nothing I can do, any high level stuff I can do, any big ideas. Other than that, I'm checked out and I'm focused on the bigger picture.
yeah. Don't be the knight in shining armor trying to save the situation.
Yep.
That's not going to help anyone. They need to do it themselves. They're smart enough people. If you've hired the right people, they're smart enough to figure it out themselves and help save themselves. You can help direct them and guide them with a couple of questions, but don't give them the answer. Let them come to the answer themselves. Is what I found worked really well for that. Yeah, so it's just like, yeah, that's interesting points. It's funny how you don't realize all the stuff that you've learned over time until you start talking about it.
Until you get forced to talk for an hour, and then all the stuff, all that just comes pouring out. You have nothing else to do other than just share all the stuff back in your mind.
Yeah,
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, given as a perfect kind of a segue to a transition to an end there, I always like to at the end give people the opportunity to share whatever they want to share in terms of plugs where people can learn more about you. So for anyone that's listening right now, watching right now, that wants to learn more about you, wants to learn more about Cubotica, what you're doing, anything you're giving away, whatever you're selling, pitching, the floor is yours to do that.
cool. Yeah. There's no sales, no pitch. Never done it in my life. I hate it. In general. So there you go. You can build an agency without having to sell.
Love it.
So it's like you just go to, if you want to check me out, cubatica.com, or go check out joshuabretag.com, or join Life School, which is like a group that I've formed of where I just dump all my musings. No specific content and stuff, just like cool stuff that interests me of that day or I think is important to share with people, and I put it there. So check out those sort of 3 places if you want to hear about us or check us out.
Easy, man. So yeah, we'll drop all those links below. So if you guys are watching right now, those links will probably be somewhere underneath here. And just wanted to thank you again for coming on, man. Always a pleasure to chat with you. Always learn so much, and just have a great conversation. We'll definitely have you on again. And I will see everyone on next week's episode. Thanks, guys.